Good afternoon. My name is John with the Pine Tree, and I have the great pleasure of being here with Supervisor Tom Tryon.
Hello, John.
Hey, thank you for joining us on camera here a little bit. Now, this is going to be a little, I guess, a little chat, as now that we're getting into the heart of election season, on kind of a little simple who, what, when, where, and why. So if somebody hasn't followed the career of Mr. Tryon, fill us in.
Well, I guess I came back in like 1983. I was a graduate of Cal, was in the military, graduated with an MBA from the University of Chicago.
Wow.
Worked for the Farm Credit System for 3 years out of the Berkeley branch, doing Production Credit Association loans, which were production loans. And then I left the Farm Credit System and was a vice president with Crocker National Bank in Fresno, California, doing agricultural production loans. And then Dad became ill, and I came back. I left Crocker. I was sort of ready to move on.
Right.
But rather than going immediately into a new job, I came back to the ranch, and Charlie Wistus was then the county supervisor, and he asked if I would be on the planning commission. And, I was a big libertarian, and I wasn't much in favor of very much government, etc.
Right.
But my mother and father both encouraged me strongly to do so. And we have significant economic interests here. And
yes.
we have the ranch and the like. And I thought, well, it'd probably be a good thing. Maybe I'd sort of understand it better, because I didn't really understand it well at all. So I was on the planning commission for a couple years. I think it was 2 years. Don't hold me to that, but it was for some period of time. I mean, this is back in, 83 or 4 or something. And it was interesting, because the first community plan for Murphy's, I voted on as a planning commissionist.
Interesting.
And then Charlie decided not to run for re-election. I think he had some health issues. And so in 1983, I filed for the board, thinking, well, if I'm not successful, I'll go back into the real workforce, the private sector. And I was successful by one vote after many recounts.
Wow.
1309 to 1308.
Wow.
I ran against a very fine gentleman and a very strong candidate in Tony Tyrell. And so I assumed office then in January of '84.
Oh, so that was against Tony.
Yeah, that was against Tony.
Interesting.
And, I met my wife, Denise. I'm fourth generation from Angels as far as the family history is concerned. And Denise is fourth generation from Murphy's. And her grandmother was alive then and lived on Church Street. And her parents still live on Watkins. And Bill used to work for the lumber mill in White Pines when Denise was growing up, and then he retired as the general manager for the sewer, the Murphy Sanitary District.
Right.
And her mother, Georgia, worked many years for the post office in Murphy's and retired from the post office. So that's sort of how we sort of got together. And
your roots run deep here, don't
Denise
they?
and I met at the Murphy's Hotel on a homecoming Saturday night.
Really?
Yeah. And so we met there, and she's a graduate of Santa Clara University. We always went to the Catholic Church, and I was raised Catholic, and we went to the Catholic Church in Murphy's because they had an 8:30 Mass, and it was 10 o'clock in Angels, and we'd come up from Rio Vista, and we had a lot of ranch stuff to do and all this, so we'd go to the early Mass. Dad would wake us all up, and we all wanted to sleep in, and so he'd kick us all out of bed, and we'd go up to Murphy's. And I guess Denise probably was there, but we're 10 years separate, so when I was up there and I was 13 and 14, she was 3 and 4 going to the Murphy's church. So, we have no recollection of each other, which is probably just as well. And Father Donahoe was the priest. I don't know. And then he would, and it was nice. So we always had a short Mass in Murphy's because he had to rush down to Angels to get ready for the Angels Mass. And the Angels Mass was always a lot longer than the Murphy's Mass.
Right.
So we'd go to Murphy's, and then we'd come back and do ranch chores. And then I met Denise, I guess in the late 70s or early 80s, and it was at the Murphy's Hotel, and a couple friends and I went up there, and she was sitting at a table with some friends from school friends from Murphy's, and she had now graduated from Santa Clara, and she was working for, I think, the the Historical Society in San Andres. And she
Mm-hmm.
had a job, and she was working there, and kind of as an interim thing, thinking she was going to go get a real job and go back to the big city and all this. So we met at the Murphy's Hotel and sort of hit it off, and we were married right here. In fact, right down here at the swing, if you look at the swing to our left, and I guess you can't see that, but that's where Denise and I were married, right under that swing.
Oh, nice.
Swing set. And that's, I don't think it's 30 years yet, but it's 27 or 28
wow.
years.
Now,
and my daughter was married here last summer,
last
Elizabeth.
summer here.
And she was married right down there, too. So two family members have been married here.
Nice. Now, how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have an older brother, John, who graduated from Oregon State University. And my sister Mary graduated from Cal, and then has some kind of a master's in planning from the University of Wisconsin, and then was in the private sector for a while and decided she wanted to get a law degree, so she came back and went to law school.
Wow.
I'm not quite sure where she went to law school, but she has her law degree. Currently, she's working for the Bay Area Regional Water Quality Control Board.
Interesting.
Down in the Bay Area.
Well, that makes sometimes probably some nice contacts to go make a few phone calls and see what.
See
how they did things
there. May we send our polluted water down your way, Mary?
Now, you've been a supervisor now for how many terms?
Well, this is my sixth term.
Sixth term.
Next January, I'll have been on the Board of Supervisors for 24 years.
Wow. Now, is that the longest?
Actually, I'm the fourth longest sitting, most senior sitting supervisor in the state of California. Jane Dolan of Butte County is number one. And I was elected in '84, and I think Jane was elected in like '78.
Wow.
And then there's Mike Antonovich is either 2 or 3, and he's a county supervisor in Los Angeles County.
Right.
In fact,
this
is quite a few years ago. He ran for governor on the Republican ticket.
Yeah.
He was a Republican nominee for governor. And then there's a gentleman in Ventura County, John something or other, who's number 3, and I'm number 4. Although I looked at the brochure and realized, because I saw my name was number 4, but I see the name under me was also in '84, so I think I'm tied for number 4.
Tied
I told
for
everybody,
number 4.
and I think even on my brochure I said number 4, because you look at the brochure and I was the 4th name,
right?
And I never looked below it, and the 5th name, and they have like number 5, and they have his name, but I looked over after all this was printed and realized he was elected the same time. So I guess I'm tied for number 4.
Tied for number 4.
Tied for number 4.
Well, I think that you bring a great deal of organizational history to the table, I mean, as a supervisor, because I think, so I guess going forward, what are some of the things you think are the biggest challenges for the county, and how do you think, what do you see going forward for this next term?
Well, clearly, from the citizens' point of view, the greatest challenge is going to be how are we going to address and accommodate growth.
Right.
And I've been sort of preaching for quite a while now is that we need to do a lot better on infrastructure.
Yeah.
Even in Murphy, you can take like the Murphy's community plan area. Where we want to sort of direct growth. We don't want a lot more, in my opinion, what I would refer to as rural sprawl.
Right.
And dirt roads on 20-acre parcels that are unsustainable. But even in the Murphy's community plan area, for instance, there's a lot of it's not even served by sewer. And so we're saying, well, geez, we want growth in the community plan areas, and we can't even get the sewer service, because we can't get them included in the boundaries of the sanitary district.
Okay.
And so one of the things we have to do, and we're a lot of people now are talking about growth, and we would like an economic element in the general plan.
Yeah.
But quite frankly, the greatest hindrance to economic growth in the county, particularly commercial growth, is a lack of infrastructure in the community centers. I mean, San Andres Sanitary is basically at a standstill.
Yeah.
Murphy Sanitary is basically at a standstill, and the county's basically going to have to fix the whole dang thing because we have to hook the new jail up to it, and so we're going to spend
you'll end up
hundreds of thousands of dollars fixing Murphy San Andres Sanitary District so we can hook the jail up to it.
Yeah.
Valley Springs Sanitary is just almost defunct, and now you've got think Ryan Voorhees going in and just sort of redoing the whole thing so he can have a project. You got the Wallace stuff that is totally dysfunctional. And if you look at the state requirements, the cost of being in business for a sanitary or water district is going up dramatically.
It's huge.
And the way you're going to have to cope with that, the best way we have for coping with it, and that doesn't mean your rates aren't going to go up no matter how you cope with it, is we need more hookups. We need to have more economies of scale if we're going to have more efficiencies.
Okay.
And so we have these small districts, and we need to get CCWD more involved, which is one of the reasons I'm a strong advocate of having CCWD have a permanent seat on the board of on the board of on LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission, because they have to be a major player if we're going to get any economies of scale. The CCWD currently has around $37 million in the bank. They're going to be probably in 10 or 15 years, commencing with the renegotiations of the North Fork project. They should get many, many more millions out of that. They're a county-wide organization. They're the default provider for the entire county when it comes to sewer and water. And so it's absolutely critical to get CCWD to be a major player. And it's absolutely critical for these small districts that do not have the number of hookups necessary to provide any economies of scale and the efficiencies to go with them, to start doing joint ventures and start working with CCWD so that we can provide those efficiencies. And particularly on the Highway 4 corridor, I think we need to be much more of an integrated whole on the Highway 4 corridor, and we need to start thinking more not as individual communities on the Highway 4 corridor, but we're all going to live off the benefits of the Highway 4 corridor.
I mean, it is one economic block for for all intents and purposes anyway.
Yes, and CCWD right now has retained a consultant, and they're doing a master study for water and sewer for the Highway 4 corridor, and it will be very interesting to see the results of that study and to analyze them, and hopefully we can have some community hearings on them and say, look, this is kind of where we need to go, hopefully, and hopefully it will lay out a blueprint of in some ways of how to get there. So,
right.
So we'll see. We'll see if we can get more integration on the Highway 4 corridor, which I think we need to do.
I guess just to touch the last segue from that little piece of it all is, so you think that some of the infrastructure pieces like that are some of the way forward, I guess. I guess they're talking about economic vitality instead of economic development, because that's more of a holistic term, I guess. But I guess, do you think some of the infrastructure things need to, I mean, then we would have the facilities in place to allow growth in a good way to happen? Is that okay?
I mean, you can't really have growth, whether it be residential or commercial, if you don't have the infrastructure to support it. I mean, you will still get residential growth, but it won't be in the community centers. It won't be clustered. It'll result in rural sprawl, and you will not be on sewer and water. We already have problems in the upper McCollum Rivershed with failed septics affecting the quality of the water in the upper McCollum Rivershed, and apparently that's coming out of septics in West Point and the areas up there. And how do you come back in and fix them? And how do you put them on a sewer or put them on public water when you have too few hookups per mile? I mean, it becomes prohibitively expensive.
There's no, you're saying there's no economies of scale.
Yeah, you have to have some economies of scale.
Let's assuming we get the infrastructure needs and stuff, some plans. What are some of the other things, going forward for the county as you see as opportunities?
Well, I think we need to capture more of our retail sales dollars.
Okay.
I mean, we trail badly in comparison to Amador County. We trail badly in comparison to Tuolumne County.
Right.
And the simple reality is the Highway 4 corridor does much of its shopping, including healthcare services, which is another issue. And just talking about healthcare, it's absolutely critical, in my opinion, for the county's well-being to have a very viable healthcare system centered around the hospital in Santa Cruz, North Wayne, St. Joseph's. And I think they have a new administrator, and I've been impressed with him, and I think he's
good things this last year or so.
Yeah, but we need to make, it's in all of our interests to have a viable healthcare system in Calaveras County. But
especially since we have a
going
fairly
back
old
then
demographic.
to the retail dollars. I mean, you go over to Sonora, and usually when we go over, my wife will stop at Staples, and we'll stop at the Walmart. If Walter's here, we'll stop by Mervyn's and get some school clothes for them.
Sure.
I need more Levi's. Why we get my Levi's there, and we get some shirts, and we get the boxer shorts and stuff. And if Walter's with us, and whenever Walter comes back on spring on a break, he always runs to Sonora, and the first thing he does is go to Big Five and get a basketball or a football, depending on what season it is, because we can't even buy that. On the Highway 4 corridor.
Right.
And I sit in Walmart because usually I take my reading, and my wife goes and does her shopping. And I swear to God, I can't get any reading done because about every 2 or 3 minutes, someone's walking in saying, "Hi, Tom."
Yeah.
How you doing, Tom? Hey, Tom. Hey, Tom. You're in Sonora, Tom. Huh? Huh, Tom? So the simple reality is, I mean, people say, well, we don't want a large volume retail, but because that will affect the local businesses. Well, it already is.
Right.
I mean, Walmart, Staples, Mervyn's, Big Five. I mean, they're already getting the Highway 4 tax dollars, and you leave Highway 4, and the rest of the county basically goes to Jackson, Martell, and Ione. And so Amador County receives the benefits there.
Well,
and we can't compete in that environment.
Well, we know from Marita that she probably doesn't want a Walmart in Arnold, right? Isn't that no, just kidding, Marita. But where in the county would...
I think we'll put Walmart like someplace where because it's a high volume business, and we'll save Arnold for the adult bookstores.
Ah, there we go. Yeah, okay.
Tell Marita that.
Yeah, okay. But I guess if we assume that growth is going to come at some point, where do we want it? I mean, where do you, is there going to be a spot in the county?
Well, you want it where you have infrastructure, number one.
Okay.
As a minimum, you want it where you have infrastructure.
Right.
It seems to me you want retail, residential growth as much as possible on infrastructure in the community centers. Secondly, you want commercial, especially small volume commercial. I think is very compatible in the community centers of whether it be Murphy's or Arnold. And then you can talk about, well, where do you put some of the larger volume stores? I think on the Highway 4 corridor, someplace in the Angels vicinity makes the most sense because you're at the intersection of 4 and 49. Right. And everybody has to drive through basically Angels Camp to go. Unless you turn off in Vallecito and take Paris Ferry Road, but you basically go to Angels to go to Sonora. Sure. So if you have it in Angels, you don't have to go to Sonora.
And you would still pull from
you
Copper.
can still pull from Copper, and you can pull from San Andres. You probably get half the people from San Andres to come this way, and the other half will still go to Amador, and like Moke Hill or West Point and Railroad Flat, they'll still go to Amador. And Valley Springs, quite frankly, either goes to Ione or goes to Stockton. And they probably will continue to do so. But we have to start thinking more, in my opinion, of the Highway 4 corridor as an integrated whole. And we need to do those things that make economic and marketable sense. And there's certain things that work in certain locations, and it's like in real estate they always say, well, what are the three most significant criteria or importance in real estate? Well, it's location. Yeah. So location matters.
Yes, it does.
And you have to look at your growth patterns and see where the locations are that provide the greatest amount of infrastructure, the least amount of disruption, and meet the market needs of the citizenry. The citizens want those services, and if the citizens don't want those services and won't frequent those stores, then obviously they will not be successful. So it's up. In the final analysis, it's up to the citizens to voluntarily frequent those stores. It's not like government where you have to go to government to get your permit and to do this. You don't have to go to any retail store. You get to pick. That's your decision as a consumer. So to me, the question is, if you want a larger volume retail store, the question to me is infrastructure and location. And there's certain locations that will work, and there's certain locations that won't, and you would certainly want to pick one that has the least amount of disruption as far as and the best infrastructure, including circulation.
Well, and I guess the last question on that before we move on is, like, I think some people obviously want everything just to stay the same, to stay, to stay as it is. But I think that just with the sheer numbers is, at some point, whether it seems like whether you're for the growth or not against the growth, we're going to get it. So I think the point is that it's not, we can't keep it at arm's length forever. So it's just we're going to get it one way or another anyway, right? Isn't that?
I think that's true. Quite frankly, you say, well, this is growth inducing. Well, most of the things that environmentalists want to say are growth inducing, quite frankly, aren't growth inducing. What's growth inducing is having babies. And now what you're doing is accommodating the growth. You do it through having babies, and you do it through immigration. That's growth inducing.
So are you on record as promoting the increasing the birth rate in the county? I'm just joking.
But after that, it's not really growth inducing. It's growth accommodating. Housing's accommodating the growth that's already occurred. People live in these houses.
Right. You don't want something like Vladimir Putin did in Russia and have like a. Never mind. If you hadn't seen that in the news,
I don't think there's much Vladimir Putin does that I agree with. But maybe there's something out there. I'm not aware of it.
Well, I guess to kind of slowly wrap things up a little bit is people are looking forward to casting a ballot. What are the unique things that make a vote for Tom Tryon the right thing for people to do?
Okay. I would say there's probably two foundations to base your vote on when you're looking at Tom Tryon. I'll leave it up to the other candidates to define their reasons to be voted in or out of office. Number one is my historical performance. Quite frankly, if you look at Murphy's, in my opinion anyway, and in the opinion of many, is the most successful of the old historical communities on the Highway 4 Golden Chain corridor. It wasn't a particularly successful community in 1984.
Right.
We'd had major rains, like the last two storms with the wind and stuff in March. Just about every business on Main Street would flood. We had no drainage on Main Street. It was terrible. A lot of things were controversial. We came in and we tore up Main Street. And then we had big controversy: should it be curb, gutter, and sidewalk?
Interesting.
I wasn't that. I wanted the rolling gutters because I wanted something different than just curb, gutter, and sidewalk. And and a lot of the battles were some with the citizens that would sort of disagree with me, which is certainly every citizen's right, and a lot of them were Public Works that had their image of what infrastructure should do and look like, and my God, this is the model, and we're going with the model. And so we had battles, and we've developed Murphy's very much as a pedestrian community. We've done the off-street parking. We haven't required, and this was extremely controversial, when we didn't require on-site parking for commercial, and even the new commercial. And there was a lot of new commercial. It isn't just the historical buildings, the old stone buildings downtown with a hotel. Jim Riggs, he put that new segment in. Where,
the new section.
That was the new addition. It was just a wooden addition, and it wasn't much. And when they did Alchemy and that, and there's no on-site parking. When River did the ground or the Red Bud Inn and all that, and there was very little on-site parking. We allowed the off-site parking. Those were all very controversial, and they were particularly controversial within the county. And
in hindsight, it's worked really well.
It was very controversial, and it was controversial in the community. And when they did where Alchemy is, help me with
that whole section down
there.
That
section, that Drammer et al. Built, and Drammer did the Red Bud Inn, Steve also. But we had a meeting down at the Black Bark Players, and everyone says, well, you have to do what the community wants. But we held a meeting down there. If you wanted to poll those in attendance at that community meeting, we wouldn't have built the Arbors. That's what I'm trying to say. The Arbors project. I mean, most of the projects in Murphy's wouldn't have happened if you would have pulled the community meeting. But a community meeting isn't the community either. That's those in attendance at a community meeting. And we've worked hard, and I've worked hard to make Murphy's a very open community, and we've evolved a lot. You know, and now we're you know, it's evolved right now to where, you know, we have a lot of wine tasting. We have the arts. We're known for food. We're known for weddings. And they're everywhere. I mean, we have the Congregational Church. We have the Masonic Hall. We have the Catholic Church. We have weddings down at the park. We have weddings at Broll. We have weddings at Ironstone. We have weddings at Gerber. I mean, you know, we have flower shops now.
And that's birth rate conducive, right?
It's too dang romantic. If we don't stop this romanticism, we're going to have continued growth.
That's right.
But, you know, to me, and it's an open community.
Yeah.
You know, we allowed the mixed uses on Main Street, and that was extremely controversial, where we allowed commercial and residential, and basically defined them, or I was the big argument for defining them as compatible, and they have been compatible. And when they did the Arbors project, they actually planned upstairs residential, and where Doris Barger lives on the Scott Street side, a beautiful residence there going in with the commercial, and that's been very compatible.
I guess then, do you see then as the role of a supervisor then is to balance, I mean, in some ways, between things like public works and the county government and everything, and plus the citizens' wishes, and in some ways, on some of those issues, to craft good policy, you may not make either of them happy. Is that? I mean, maybe that's
happened.
No, but I mean,
I've gone through some of that. Yeah.
No, but I mean, I think isn't that?
Well, I guess one of the things I would put it to you.
But that's good governance.
I would put it to you this way: there tends to be, how to state this? There tends to be somewhat of a conflict between what I would say are I don't want to make this gender specific. I was going to say marketing guys and finance guys, but just say marketing people and finance people.
Yeah.
And marketing people come in and think, well, you know, if you're a good marketing person, why, you can sell anything, and you can sell ice to an Eskimo, and we can make it all work from marketing.
Right.
You know, and I'm not a marketing guy.
Yeah.
I'm a finance, capital flows guy. So I come in and say, well, marketing's a key component, but you have to have something to market that's real and valuable.
Okay.
And one of the things, you know, I've worked hard for in Murphy's is to make sure that we have an environment that's conducive to attract capital. And one of the things that does not, and this is where there's been disagreements between myself and certain elements in Murphy's. One of the things that does not, is a disincentive to the attraction of capital, is over-regulation. You know, and they had a design and scenic review district and made up of local citizens that were going to control the community, and if you didn't like what they did, you appealed it to the planning commission. If you didn't like what they did, you appealed it to the Board of Supervisors. Well, you know, I was on, and I was fortunate. I had two other strong votes that backed me on the Board of Supervisors, so I had the 3 votes I needed, and we abolished design and scenic review. We did not entertain in historical districts.
Okay.
We didn't do those things that provide a disincentive for capital.
Right.
And the other thing you do when you do this, you know, when you sort of over-regulate, is the great Austrian economist F.A. Hayek put a term in the economic vocabulary called creative destruction, which means you have to accommodate change.
Yeah.
You know, you can't take this concept, which people love to do, and we're going to put regulations in, like you said earlier, so it never changes.
Right.
Well, then you don't have creative destruction, and in the end, that's a disincentive for capital attraction. You have to have creative destruction, which means you have to advance. Somebody comes up with a new idea, you remodel, you come up with a better mousetrap. You know, you innovate, you be creative. You have to be attractive to entrepreneurship, which means risk taking, which means creativity, which means you know, a rate of return, which means those kinds of concepts. So I'm sort of I'm a finance capital flow guy, and what I do is I end up sort of in conflict with the marketing people who think that if you could just freeze it as a point in time, sort of the concept of perpetuity, which is a horribly destructive concept in economic terms,
right?
Because it destroys the concept of creative destruction and change. So they come up with, like, we want to have a lot of regulations and we want to do all this, and that'll be our brand. Getting into branding, and that'll be our brand. And my God, we're going to just sell it.
Right.
But you can't forget about capital attraction and creativity and creative destruction. You have to accommodate those. Those are very basic economic principles if you want to have economic growth. And so I would say to a significant degree, the conflicts have been between myself as a finance sort of capital flows person and the marketing group. And we have lots of people up here that focus on marketing.
Right.
And not very many people that focus on capital flows and capital attraction and sort of entrepreneurship and creative destruction and accommodating a change and some and sort of mixed uses and seeing where the market wants to take us,
right.
and where we can achieve sustainable market returns so we can have a viable economy.
It seems to have worked in your district.
Well, so far, so good.
I think of all the districts, with the exception of the budding town down in Copper, I think, but as far as the sustainable economy over the long haul,
Well, it's interesting since you brought up Copper and the Coppertown Center, and the person that's designing that is Rudy Ortega, and Rudy's the one that designed the arbors. And when he designed arbors, he tried to capture the flavor of the current community, which was the mixed commercial, mixed commercial residential, and he incorporated that in the arbors. And now he's incorporating it down there.
In
so
Copper.
you can't. You don't want to say this to the Castle and Cook people, but in many ways it's almost like Murphy's West. And even you have. I don't know if I should say this. Even you have Dave Haley, who's the general superintendent for Castle and Cook down there, and he moved from Copper to Murphy's and is living now in Murphy's. So
there you go.
I find it interesting that Murphy's has done so well and seems to be so. I guess I'm not surprised by it, but I guess what I'm surprised by is after 24 years, and most people that are probably around and actively involved weren't here 24 years ago, so they don't really know where we started. But still, the level of sort of opposition to my candidacy in Murphy's, and maybe that'll get eroded a little this time. We'll see. But I don't see how anybody can argue with the success of Murphy's.
It's a jewel. I think without. I don't see how you qualify it as. People will say, each little business may not always be doing as well as they should be, but if you take Murphy's as a collective whole, it's a jewel. It really is a special place.
And one of the things about it is there probably are very few businesses there that could sustain themselves alone, but they're all complementary. The food complements the wine, which complements the arts, which complements the flowers, and we have art galleries, and then we have we have the music in the park, and we have Bart Theaters, and we have Murphy's Theater, and we have events out at some theater events out at Ironstone, and they're all complementary one to another. So it's sort of an aggregation that makes sense in the aggregate, where individually I'm not sure the different components would be very sustainable individually.
Because and even something such as wonderful as Ironstone probably couldn't sustain itself without the town of Murphy's as an additional draw.
And without the other wineries. And the other wineries do weddings also, and and the weddings and the festivities sell a lot of local wine. They sell a lot of wine at those events. and they give a very good reputation to the community. And the nice thing is when you do those kinds of events, I mean, to do a wedding, you have to have a beautiful garden.
Yeah.
You know, to do a theater setting, you have to have a beautiful garden. You know,
right.
So it elevates the what do I want to say? The you know, so we basically have, you know, beautiful gardens and trees and the like. And you look at where Twisted Oaks has their tasting downtown.
Yeah.
And they've done a wonderful job with the garden to make it attractive for wine tasting.
And it creates more clients for Dawn, right?
Yeah, and so I mean, who's getting rich? The landscapers. The landscapers are getting rich.
So I guess,
but you know, it's elevated the whole community because everybody needs that to be successful.
Well, I know this is technically in the, you know, in the incorporated city of Angels, but moving, do you think the next few years then, with the bypass and everything else, Angels has the opportunity to really rebrand, so to speak? It's downtown.
But they have to not only rebrand, they have to attract capital.
Right.
You know, and you never hear, we don't have any seminars on how you attract capital.
Right.
We have seminars on marketing.
Sure.
And you know, you need some seminars on how you attract capital, on entrepreneurship, and what entrepreneurs are looking for, and they have to, you know, if you're going to have historical districts and just, you know, narrowly define what you can do, then you destroy the ability of entrepreneurs to be creative. And entrepreneurs, if they're going to make the investment in the dollars, they want to have some creativity in what they're creating.
And they want to return.
And what they're doing, and they want to make money at it. And the like. But I think it will be very helpful to Angels, the Highway 4 bypass, and I think it would be more helpful, additionally helpful, when we get a 49 bypass, and downtown, the annex and the like will all be a city road. And once the city gets control of it, like we have control of it. I mean, if we had to deal with the state to do all these road closures for Irish Days, for wine tasting, for Murphy's, for Grape Stomp, for Homecoming, you know, for the Christmas open house, for all this stuff, it would be a nightmare. I mean, you know, we wouldn't be able to do it. I mean, we can do it because it's a county road. And you know, at one point, Public Works and the Highway Patrol in Murphy said they didn't want any more road closures. Absolutely no more road closures. And that's when Lieutenant Contoleri, who lives in Forest Meadows, was the guy in charge. And Public Works didn't want any more road closures, and the Highway Patrol didn't want any more road closures. And I took it to the board, and I was able to get 3 votes, and we passed a resolution and said we're still going to do road closures. And you know, there were some people, not necessarily in Murphy's, but certainly the Highway Patrol and Public Works were not happy at all about it. And one of the problems we always had with road closures was on the French Gulch side, where you come onto Church Street. We divert traffic there, and those first 2 turns were too sharp, and so people on motorhomes and stuff couldn't make it. So we had a nightmare there. And Larry Smith and Dutton and his family, who owned the vacant land where the mules and stuff are on the other side, were kind enough to allow, I think basically give to the county enough property to widen those 2 turns, and that made a huge difference. Thereafter, and I don't think very many people realize the significance and the importance on the road closures that the Smith family contributed when they allowed the widening of the road down there, because that was
so every time somebody sees Larry Smith, they need to thank him next.
Or Carla, or you know, I think. You know, or other family. I think Larry has brothers and sisters, or at least a sister.
Right, the Smith family.
Yeah, the Smith family. You can thank them because that made a huge difference.
I will do so tomorrow.
And that took a lot of pressure off me, and it took a lot of pressure off diverting the traffic when Larry, when the Smith family. I dealt with Larry, and I must say that family is the most community-oriented family I've ever met. And they're very community-oriented and very helpful to the community and always step forward.
Well, I think one of the things is, you know, I guess we're relative newcomers here. We've only been in the county since 2000, but this is a great county. You know, for all of its, you know, for people always see, but I mean, and if you look at the next 20 years going forward, you know, if the growth is managed well and stuff like that, we have the opportunity to really, for this county to mature as a real, I mean, is something really special. I mean, you have the Murphys there, you have the stuff up at Bear Valley now. I mean, it's.
Some people ask me, well, geez, Tom, you know, if you're successful, this will be your last term. And you know, one thing in politics, you never say it's your last term until you absolutely are convinced it's your last term. So I'm not saying that. But I would certainly like to see the general plan updated and the community plan in Murphy's updated before I left the board. Now, I don't know whether that happens in 4 years or more than 4 years.
Yeah.
But, you know, as I said earlier, I'm very much for an open community, like we've been able to achieve at Murphy's. One of the things I'm absolutely opposed to are gated communities. I think that, you know, I think we need to be an open society, and I think we need to all sort of rise and be have the same level of interest in how we're doing and not isolate ourselves. So I've always spoken very strongly against gated communities. In my district, I think there's only one, and that's within the city of Angels, on a little community out Dogtown Road. And why that's gated is beyond my comprehension. And quite frankly, I think, you know, people talk about Greenhorn quite a bit in Greenhorn Creek in Angels, and you know, to me the best thing about that community is it wasn't gated.
It wasn't gated.
And people walk out there and they go out there and they're part of the community, and Greenhorn's a part of Angels, and I think you would have a totally different culture and different community if Greenhorn had been a gated community.
It would be almost very isolationist almost if it was. Huh?
Yeah, and it's nice. I mean, you know, my wife goes walking out there. You know, it's Christmas time. And, you know, it's an upper income community, so they have a little more money. So it's Christmas time. Everybody likes to drive by and look at the Christmas lights and see what's going on in Greenhorn. And it's wonderful to have the community be able to do that, in my opinion. You know, and I think we need an integrated a community, not a balkanized or sort of community that isolates itself by culture or by income.
Right.
And you know, I think
so
we haven't done that in Murphy's, and quite frankly, they haven't done that in Angels, in spite of that one little community, which quite frankly isn't a particularly upper income community that does have the gate, which I find sort of.
So you believe in Groucho Marx maxims, right?
Anyway.
One of the things I'd like to see is, you know, in the time that we've been following the board, is I think is how lucky the populace is, whether is our supervisors and public officials, they work tirelessly. They go to the community events. They go to I think whether people, I don't think people realize the commitment and the time commitment that you guys, you know, probably collectively as a group do. And I just want to say thank you. I think it's...
You're very welcome, and you're correct. It's amazing the difference in the demand to be on the Board of Supervisors today versus 1984.